Good evening and welcome to the News 9 Digital Content Center. Welcome aboard as I'm Dylan Cleland along tonight with Steubenville Mayoral candidate Kimberly Hahn. Kimberly, thanks for coming in. The election is always such an exciting time of year, no matter if it's local races, state races, or what we just had with federal races. And you've been out on the campaign trail now for a while, seeking this mayoral candidate or mayoral nomination here in the primary coming up in a couple of weeks. So let's just start with that. How have things been out on the trail?
Yeah, it's one of the greatest privileges to knock on people's doors and get to talk to them about what their concerns are for the community, how council can address the needs that they see, what role the mayor has that's different from when I served on council for 8 years. And there are differences, and you don't want to build up a false expectation of what you can do and what you can't do. And so I just really consider it a privilege to speak to the people.
And you mentioned your time on council. You have time serving in the council at large position, that seat. And so I would have to imagine there's some experience that you can draw from as you enter this journey.
Yes. Actually, a lot of projects now are coming to fruition that I played an important role in. Yeah.
And so to kind of see that progress and then know what still lies ahead for the city of Steubenville,
Yes.
how does that excite you? Does that give you passion for more? How would you describe that?
Yes. I think one of the challenges is letting things develop at their natural pace, which in government is slowly. I think the benefit is that we don't make mistakes, quickly, but we at the same time have to be patient, and it takes a lot of time to work through the stages of something like the North End water tower that's going in now. Years ago, we knew it was going to be very expensive. I found out about a grant opportunity in Columbus. I invited others to come with me, and a few in the actual finance and water and sewer department went with me. And we were able to secure $1 million loan from the Army Corps of Engineers that we heard about at that meeting. So I think you take initiative, you look at what the tax dollars are, and I think we try to build in the infrastructure money to be able to tackle some major projects in water and sewer. But at the same time, when we do major projects like that water tower, it is so expensive. We need to supplement the tax monies that are coming in with grant dollars. And that means you've really got to look for it.
Well, and that is a pivotal role because, we cover a lot of council meetings, Steubenville, of course, but other places as well. And a lot of things you hear week to week out of these meetings are we need to seek these grant opportunities, these money opportunities, because there's only so much money to go around for every department, just within the general budget and things like that. So having that eye on how can we do this fiscally responsibly, but also maybe get something out of it, so that we don't have to front it up front.
Exactly. Or just buy into the idea that you can just keep going into debt to do the things you have to do without understanding all of those bills eventually come due. And I think I've proven that I can do this. I think it's very important to show the people how you are a good steward of the finances. So for instance, we have quite a lengthy budget process, and all 8 years that I was on council, we balanced our budget. And through some real crises, it wasn't just business as usual. We had COVID and all the kinds of the complications with the shutdowns and many other situations that were unusual. Our ambulance company decided to fold here in Steubenville, and how could we serve the people well and not be able to say, we have ambulance coverage. So I supported the efforts that we made to use COVID dollars and then also American Rescue Plan dollars to be able to purchase the ambulances needed for the fire department to take that over. Every other community around us has the people pay tax toward their ambulance service. And so far, we have been able to not do that and still meet the needs of our people. So, on the one hand, we want to be good stewards of the money coming in. On the other, we want to try to stretch those dollars with grant dollars.
Sure. And that's an interesting perspective. That finance perspective is oftentimes the base of everything, of every project, department, whatever it might be that they're seeking. Some other things as we begin here with Kimberly Hahn, who's running for Steubenville mayor. I did want to ask you a little bit about. I have a handful of topics, but
Okay.
but you had touched on a couple of things. Just let's take a step back first, though.
Okay.
And if you
Okay.
want to kind of introduce yourself a little bit, maybe for someone who wasn't here when you were serving on
Sure.
council, if you'd like to do
Sure.
that.
All right. So I moved here with my husband 35 years ago. And when we came, we had 3 children and we had 3 more here. So raised our family here, been here for 35 years. We homeschooled our children, and then our children attended either Big Red or Catholic Central. And so I am a Big Red football mom for 2 sons, and I am a Catholic Central soccer mom for 2 sons. All of our children attended Franciscan University, and 4 of my in-laws also. And one of my in-laws who didn't is now a professor there.
Okay.
So the university has been very good to us. Very grateful for the employment for my husband, and also to bring us into this wonderful community. And we have loved living in Steubenville, and eager to contribute in any way we can. In 2001, my husband and I co-founded the St. Paul Center. And just recently, we finished our building. We've been in just a year. Beautiful building on Sunset Boulevard that turns into University Boulevard. And so I actually am partially responsible for the development of 45 good-paying full-time jobs and about 8 part-time jobs. And we have a beautiful studio. We have a facility that we can use for small retreats. And so I think not only do we need jobs here, but we want to encourage people to consider, even at a beginning level, to maybe bring their business here, open another office in Steubenville. And that's one of the most important things I think we need to be able to have our children be able to settle here and support their own families. Many people have experienced what we have, which is you raise a large family, but the opportunities for work are elsewhere. And I want to contribute as much as I can to the development of our community here, and then jobs.
Let's stay on economic development. I do have a couple
Good.
particular items I wanted to ask you about. We look
Yeah.
around the Ohio Valley, and Weirton has seen some development. Wheeling, obviously, the streetscape project, a lot of downtown businesses
Right.
redoing. How can we kind of use that? It almost feels as if Steubenville's like almost there, but not quite there yet. How do we use those surrounding communities as building blocks, perhaps, in Steubenville to land that development or that entertainment complex or whatever it might be?
Right. We have really not had a single person who has been hired to be an economic development person. That was kind of rolled into Chris Petrosi's already very full position. And now that he has retired, a new woman is in, and she really needs to learn all the things that Chris already was doing. The mayor on his own has certainly reached out to other communities and to businesses. And I believe the city manager has well. But one of the things I think we need to do is let's really come up with a list of the tremendous qualities of life we have here. Talk about our people and their ability to work hard. They just need good paying jobs to be able to work here. Talk about the accessibility of and affordability of housing here. Talk about the tremendous school opportunities. We have an outstanding public school. We have a system. We have an outstanding Catholic school system, and we have a tremendous network of homeschoolers. So whatever people would most want for their children, it's here.
Mm-hmm.
Then the development of parks. All of the parks can still use more improvement, but we have made real improvements in our major parks. So I think if we can come up with a good working list, my hope is to go out to represent the city and say, these are the qualities that we have in our people here and in the area. Please consider coming to Steubenville and seeing what's possible. The other thing is, I know there are tax incentives that council at times has considered and we just haven't gotten very far with that. And
Mhm.
I would love to have our finance director give more specifics about what are the incentives that we could offer initially to companies to encourage them to move here. I also think the Port Authority is a great venue for opening the door for development and working with Omega. So there are entities outside of Steubenville that also could help facilitate this. But let's put our best foot forward. Let's talk about all of the improvements that have happened in the last, say, 10 to 20 years and what we project moving forward.
You mentioned the qualities of the area, people, and their hard work ethic. Obviously, with even looking back in history with the steel
Yes.
industry and things like that. These are characteristics that are passed down from generation to generation.
Yes.
With that being said, another big part of it, finance. You touched on the tax credits and that opportunities for that. But another big thing is location and availability of land and spots. And we have areas that were doing very well at, maybe 10, 15 years ago. The Fort Steuben Mall comes to mind. Downtown, right in downtown, the booming with the theater and different things like that. Now, these buildings are sitting, idle or
Yes.
maybe in need of some repair. How can we market some of these specific locations? Use what we have,
Right.
but bring in more.
Right. When it comes to the mall, my hope is that some local person will take ownership. We, as far as I know, in the history of the mall, we have not been locally owned. And so it becomes something that I think balances maybe a mall somewhere else doing very well. And so if ours is failing, it kind of helps them balance their sheet. Well, that's not helpful to us as a community. There are serious issues where the building was built over mines, and so the ground is shifting. Mayor Barilla and City Manager Mavromatis went to an area in West Virginia where they actually saw where someone had taken a mall and then redeveloped it. And so the areas where there was weakness, they were able to remove some stores and then really create almost a community there. There was housing they put in and some, I think, a small medical area. What we have to understand is right now, the city doesn't own the mall. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the city can come in and just dictate what can happen. We can't even really legally repair the parking lot area.
Right.
But if it could be locally owned, then we could work with the people to really try to move some other project forward that would retain a number of stores that are built in a safe way, and then what isn't, to be able to really address those concerns.
I want to shift from economic development to infrastructure now. You touched on it at the beginning. You talked about the water project that you've kind of seen develop now since from when you were on council until now and coming to fruition. We still see a lot of these, in the winter, we get these water main breaks and there's old lines, and we've heard about how old some of this infrastructure is, whether it be the water lines or the roads, and you're going to have that with the weather that we get here to an extent. What can someone do on council or in your role, if you were to get there and lead to bring more funding specifically for infrastructure to the area?
Well, I think on the one hand, we have built into the bill infrastructure fees. And so then we can project with the water and sewer department in the budgets how much money they will have for major projects. When they know what that is, then they apply for grants, because if they're able to, the money that we designate from the tax monies and from the collection of water and sewer infrastructure funds can be used as the matching part of a grant, so we can stretch it farther. We do need to recognize that there were years where people did not pay attention to our roads or our whole water and sewer infrastructure. I don't know why that was. I know when they charge people a lot of money to build the new water treatment plant, which now is 30 years old. It's not the new one.
Right.
People were so burdened by that increase, that council pledged they would not raise the rates. And for 25 years, they didn't raise the rates. Now it's very hard because it costs a good bit to have water and sewer in the city. But part of that is that we're paying for bills that weren't adequately provided for, and we were in the red until we were able to change that. So we just need to recognize we have a beautiful town that is older, and that means we will have to address those concerns. One thing to note, okay, part of why we put in this water tower that should be fully functional by August at the latest out in the West End is originally the one built near what was EGCC. That was supposed to carry twice as much water. So they didn't adjust the pumps, and the pumps work as if it will send out twice as much water, which is why most of the breaks happen in the newest part of town. They don't typically happen in the oldest part of town.
Right.
Then when we had almost 2 weeks of no water downtown, right at the beginning of Jerry Burilla's first term, we realized there was no redundancy. There was no backup to the water, and there was no backup to the West End. There is backup for the LaBelle Brady Estates area, but we have to have a backup plan because crises do happen.
Sure.
The benefit was it was so bad that we were able to get a $6.8 million loan, half of which the Ohio EPA forgave once we completed it. So it was worth over $3 million to the city. We had to locate where every box was that could shut off the water. And you would think that when they built it, somebody would have made a detailed map, but they did not. So we have worked very hard to map that out so that now when we have a break, we know where to shut off the water so that we can isolate that area and deal with the break more quickly. Once we get this water tower fully operational out in the West End, it should really assist us in having fewer water breaks. And of course, every water break is costing so much money because people have to work, at odd hours. We're paying overtime.
Yeah.
There's, new pipe that's got to be brought in. And if they don't have the equipment already ordered because it was a crisis they didn't know was going to happen, then they're delayed. So people are without water, So I am confident, and I could say this very frankly to anybody who's listening, that the people who work in our various departments here in the city are very competent and they are working diligently. They do not waste the money. They are not being frivolous and just whimsical in how they are spending the money. And I think they really deserve our thanks for all that they do.
We are continuing along here with Kimberly Hahn, Steubenville Mayoral candidate. And Kimberly, I do want to shift now again. A lot of topics I want to, just touch on a little bit. Let's go into recreation a little bit.
Okay.
I know when you were on council, you did a lot of work in trying to revitalize the Steubenville Marina.
Yes.
There's been a little bit of progress, but there's more that could be done. I'm sure most would agree or say. With that being said, how do we reach those new heights and turn something like the marina into, whether it be a tourist hotspot or even locals to a place for them to go?
Right. I would love for more people in Steubenville to see what others have done with their areas, like our marina. When people have, say on vacation, gone to various marinas and see the development and see the amount of dollars it brings into those cities, I think they would see what the opportunity is. We're at such a low level compared to, say, Weirton, that we could end up serving people going up and down the Ohio River. We could serve the people just across the river, our neighbors. It's also at the very entrance to the city and an entrance to the state, actually,
right.
into
when you
Jefferson
come across
County.
the bridge. Yeah.
I do see a lot of development happening in other major parks, and I think that's heartening. We were able to redo all of the ball fields with some of our American Rescue Plan dollars, and the Little League just had their parade. 330 are playing baseball, and then 100 are playing softball, and that is a great sport for families to come out and cheer them on. And I think our ball fields are doing well. And we've been able to add some dugouts, which also is very good because the heat will come on,
Yes.
and the kids need a little break, when they sit back. I worked very hard to get the dollars for our bridge, that the historic bridge that we were able to redo at Beatty Park. And Beatty Park highlights something that I think is also true of the marina, but I would love to see at each of the major parks. And that's a group, Friends of Beatty Park. They donate their time, their talents, and often materials and tools. And they inspire young families to come and join them as they restore this incredible park. Now that the bridge is done, 1/3 of the park is now available for people to drive to the bigger shelter and to walk, like I said, 1/3 of the park. So it's an in-town 99-acre wood. And every season is beautiful. Every season, because they're there, some of the homeless people or people who wanted to use drugs have simply left because there's too much activity. And I think that's a complaint I've heard of at the marina. So if we can increase the activity of the marina, I think that people will not want to come to do things that are not good. Bellevue Park has had additional play equipment added, and they're continuing to work on improvements. Jim Wood, we were able to repave the walkway, and so I think recreation actually has a component of economic development. People want a place that's beautiful to come to. We worked very hard on the pool, keeping it open. Now a significant amount of money has to be added to that just to make it secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. Let me ask you about kind of the parallel or maybe the split of this. A lot of people say, oh, it's, they're the elected officials. And to an extent, we're here to hold you accountable and
Yes.
ask about the money and where it's being spent. But you mentioned the group, the Friends of Beatty Park.
Yes.
People also have to want to help out, right? And come
Yes.
out. And so I think while it might be the city government's job to fund these things, if you get people that are invested in this stuff and can come together and help, the manpower, the hands-on work is going to go a long way. What do you kind of see as like a balance with that?
Yeah, I think that we, as a community, volunteering is very, very high as a priority. In fact, I would say it's one of the selling points of the city. When we do our United Way Day of Caring, hundreds come out, and then we go all over the city, and some of us garden, and some of us paint, and some of us collect things, maybe do neighborhood garbage collection, whatever the United Way has for our list of tasks. At the pool, we just didn't have the staff to come and weed the gardens. So some friends joined me, and we just went and worked very, very hard. Some of the city people even got the morning off, and they joined us. And so, because I wanted the children to see beauty when they came to the pool. We convinced them to take down the pine trees. Whoever thought it was a great idea to plant pine trees at a pool? Don't you want to throw your blanket over pine needles?
Right.
And so the city took out the pine trees and ground down the stumps, and then we were able to plant grass. And so it's a nice, comfortable place to be. One of the council members had an idea of doing a sign at the north end and the south end of the city, just welcoming people to Steubenville. So he worked on the sign, and then I worked with a group of women. We took a lot of plants from our own gardens at home, and we planted the gardens that exist at the north and south. And so I think, what can people do? Then you've got places like the Sycamore Center, the First Westminster Presbyterian Church has a facility that they utilize volunteer help for. And there's a way to demonstrate care for children, for elderly people, by giving of yourself. And instead of saying, well, why doesn't the city take care of this? It's like being a community means that we care for our neighbors, that we notice the needs around us, and then do what we can to help. And sometimes that means city services, but sometimes it means just rolling up your sleeve and raking your neighbor's leaves.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a lot of events and festivals we see at Historic Fort Steuben, for example, over the summer, the concert series.
Yes.
You mentioned the Little League, the youth softball and baseball starting up. It's also festival time in the summer with the Dean Martin Festival and the Greek Festival. There's a lot of opportunities to draw people in.
Yes.
And I think this circles back to economic development. It's about how do you market the city? What are some tools or some strategies that you'd be willing to put in place to just market the city and draw people here, whether it's tourism or people moving here?
Right. There are two professors at Franciscan University that every 10 years they do an economic impact study, and they show what are the supporting services that the university community has really been able to benefit from. And they have shown how hundreds of millions of dollars of development dollars have come to our area, specifically connected to the university. So one of the things I would do is sit down with the two professors and say, what are the holes? What are the things that you don't see happening that we could do a better job? I would also sit down with the city planner and say, compared to other communities you've served in, because she has now served a couple of other communities first. Because sometimes it's so close to you, you don't see what you don't see, you don't notice, and I would love to find out from her what the ideas are. Then in 2013, before my time on council adopted this 10-year plan for Steubenville.
Right.
And my last year on council, they talked about whether or not we ought to spend another $75,000 to $100,000 on a new study. And at the time, Jerry Barilla, our mayor, said, we haven't implemented very much of this. Why don't we really set up groups to figure out how can we implement more of this, because the study's done, don't need to reprint it. What we really need to do is enact more of it.
Right.
Well, I would love to help lead some of those conversations. And in fact, I really want to go to each neighborhood, not just the precinct or the ward, but neighborhood by neighborhood, and make myself available to meet with people and say, what are the concerns on your heart for your city? What can we do that would help us to appeal to the next generation coming up, for them to see the opportunities here? I'll give you one other example. So we've got the new STEM building.
Yes.
Right? Okay. What about pursuing companies that would directly benefit from the skills that these kids are going to learn? Because once they learn them, they want to work. That's why they've taken so much extra time. Okay. What in our area, are they having to go to Pittsburgh or Wheeling to find work in those areas? And I really think the excellence that they pursue there is worth highlighting, and then seeing, can we lure, those companies to come to Steubenville?
Certainly.
And, start small. Maybe you only set up an extra office here. Maybe you move your whole business there. I would also love to appeal to people who have left the area and established their businesses elsewhere to say, bring it home. Please bring it home. We would love to support you. And then we would love to have you help support our community by providing work.
One thing that you mentioned early on in our conversation this evening was government takes time. These things take time. And I think that gets lost in a lot of this. People say, okay, well, these are the ideas. This is who we want to bring in.
Right.
But it is going to take some time. So you have to kind of find that balance of acting quickly, because you don't want to lose, these students that are going through this training now, for example, at the STEM center.
Right.
So it's about, reaching out and making these contacts, I would imagine, and drawing these people in as quickly, because the long-term process does have to play out.
Right.
We are continuing our conversation here this evening on our Beyond the Podium Election 2025 coverage with Kimberly Hahn. She's running for Steubenville mayor. She'll be facing Ralph Petrella in the primary, which is set for May 6th. Kimberly, we have a few more topics I want to get into. Just this past year, in October, our anchor, Jamie Baker, my co-anchor, she did a series on homeless population in Steubenville growing. We've talked to numerous outreaches and people around the city in different roles. She did a very good job on this to kind of highlight this problem that we're seeing. What have you observed when it comes to homelessness in Steubenville?
I have not gone on the overnights where they try to count the people that say are sheltering in various places in their cars, under the bridge, that kind of thing. But I do know it is a growing problem, and it's a growing problem, I think, in part related to finances, but even more related to drugs. One of the things that happened during my time on council was there was a lawsuit against the company that created opioids, the medical company. And so our city joined a number of cities and communities called One Ohio. And I believe that the state of Ohio was to receive $1 billion for that, and then divided up among the communities. I don't know what council has done. I've asked questions, and they don't seem too aware of the monies actually being funneled to the city. So I think it's worth checking, because that was at least 2 years ago,
right,
that it was settled. But in terms of homelessness related to drug use, that might be a way that we could utilize those funds through our existing agencies to try to help people get help, and not just say it's sad that they just don't have a place to live. I do have a friend who's starting a new 501c3, and the purpose of this organization is to have another shelter somewhere in town where people who are kind of, they've had their time in the existing shelters, they have to move out, and it's to give them one more place that they can stay briefly while these people really hunt for an actual place for them to live. But they have to want it. And there are homeless communities around the country that say, I don't care if you have a place for me to go, this is where I'm going to stay. And for the safety and well-being of our people, that's really not feasible.
And so with that, you could also, cost of living, I'm sure, comes into the equation for some of these folks as well. And right now, depending on or availability of housing too.
Right.
So are these all different avenues that you'd be willing to kind of explore and see, what might be able to be a solution?
Sure. And I think definitely when it comes to our veterans, I would love to work with our veterans organizations and find out, is there a way in which we could maybe work with an organization like Tunnel to Towers, where they build housing in its own community of veterans, where they can really assist each other as well, so that they don't feel the isolation and the loneliness and the sense of abandonment that they often do. That is it is a difficult thing for our community to have people who don't have a home to live in.
You touched on having relationships with different companies and organizations to kind of help. You mentioned Omega, the Port Authority. Yeah. Just as important as those is having a good relationship with, in this case, officials from Jefferson County in the state of Ohio, and all, the whole way up the ladder.
Yes.
What have you learned during your time on council about having those partnerships or relationships with other levels of government, whether it be state or county or even federally?
Right. So I have gone to a couple of meetings of the county commissioners and presented ideas to them. And for the most part, because we are the county seat, but for the most part, they communicated back to me, I needed to not come as a representative of council, even as council at large, but really to work with all of council and then represent officially all of council to them. Because we have our own budget, we have our own taxes, we have our own police force and fire force, it's I think the county commissioners mostly serve the other communities in the county,
Mhm.
and we have a certain level of self-sufficiency that they would like us to have. At the same time, we're the county seat, and that means that we don't just take care of ourselves, but we're hopefully a source of ideas, encouragement, working together for a period of time. And I don't know historically exactly when, but there were people in leadership in Steubenville that really told other communities, basically, we don't care that you have problems there. We're going to take care of ourselves. And in fact, the mayor of Wintersville at the time I ran the first time said, I wouldn't be interested in meeting with you because we're now doing well. And when we needed Steubenville, you weren't interested, which wasn't me personally. And so now we don't need you. I mean, he really was that blunt to me. And so I think there's a different attitude now. And I would love to build on that and work with the leaders in Toronto and Wintersville and Mingo and, expand out, because of course we care about all the people in our county.
Yeah,
stretching
and I think it's safe to say too that together that there's going to be more opportunities, I think, to bring in funding or businesses. And so I've heard different variations of things that have happened over the years, and it's to me it's disheartening a little bit, because you would think that there would be, again, more opportunity. I don't know. And so I guess is that something, if you were to be elected, could you talk to council and say, can we come up with a group or a small committee that kind of focuses on that? Because at the end of the day, you can get, there's also not to mention the countywide, but also statewide and things like that.
Yes.
There's grants, which you had mentioned earlier. There's opportunities to bring that money in. And so while, a place like Steubenville is self-sufficient, as you had said, there's always room to grow. I just believe.
Yes, there is. And when I went to the little egg collecting at Beatty Park, I met a number of people that are not from here, but they heard about the opportunity. And I do think through recreation, we've been able to serve a much broader community than just Steubenville. Our fire department has a reciprocal relationship with the other areas around us. And for the time that we did not have a functioning ambulance service, they very sacrificially came to Steubenville far more than they should have.
Mhm.
And their people pay a tax for that. When we established the ambulance service, we were able to, through those grant dollars, have a service that we have not even taxed our people for. And I hope we don't. I hope that we can continue to really track the monies coming in so we can replace our equipment ourselves or go for grants. A great example of working across even state lines, I served for 8 years on BHJ Transportation and 2 years on their executive committee. And so we were working on a 40-year transportation plan with 3 different counties.
Right.
And it just broadens your perspective. The river is not this wall you can't get beyond. And the federal government, and I believe the state government, appreciates our working across these boundaries. So on the one hand, yes, Steubenville is responsible for Steubenville, but it's wonderful to reach out and to see how we can serve the broader population.
Right. That's a good point to bring up. I like that you mentioned the river is not a wall. There are friends, everyone's friends and neighbors, but there's even beyond that. I think it makes the area look more marketable, as you mentioned, to state and federally. I did want to ask you about communication amongst city departments and department leaders and with council. Just as someone who sat on council, do you feel there's room for growth with that? Do you feel like it's in a good spot?
So I've not been active
Sure.
the last 2 years,
right.
So I can only speak up to 2 years
Absolutely.
ago. I think that all the department heads meet weekly with the city manager. They go through specific projects, concerns, complaints, and then they give those notes. And this was my request, that we have a weekly report given to council so we have an idea of how are the projects moving forward, rather than saying we're working on the West End Tower and have it in the minutes for 10 years,
Right.
It's like, okay, what are you doing?
Right.
Well, we're getting this permit. Okay, the permit came in. Now we're doing this. Same thing on the roads. It can be very lengthy to do. Well, we just finished phase 3 of Lover's Lane, but it had many small components: acquiring the land, getting the utilities moved, hiring the company to survey the land that had to be surveyed. And I found it very helpful to know, okay, progress is being made. And so when people would say, is anything happening on this? Then as a council person, I could say, yes. So that weekly report became a very important communication. And I read it every single week. Don't know if every council member did, but I did. And I found it very valuable. I would love to let all your people know something that, as I've gone door to door, some people have never heard of this. So the city pays for a service called Media Alert.
Okay.
And it's a free app. Whenever there is an emergency in the city, say a water line break, major road has to be closed to do repairs, that kind of thing, they will send the alert to your phone and to an email. And it's no charge. But I honestly, as I've talked about it, going door to door, and we put this in place at least 4 years ago, I haven't met a person yet who has the app. They can go on the city website and locate it, or they can just look up Media Alert, and I think they can find it. So I would sign, and in fact, here's a benefit. So if your parents or aunt and uncle live here, you can sign up so that you're getting the alerts, because maybe your folks won't notice it. And then you can give your parents a call and say, hey, by the way, when you go grocerying, you want to avoid this street because they're going to be working on a pipe.
Sure.
So that's a way that we put in place something that would benefit people, but I don't think they know it.
Right. Yeah. And then with modern technology, there's only going to become more opportunities for things like an app or notifications for people to get to some way. I do want to mention, if you want to leave a question or a comment, we have just a little bit more time left with Kimberly Hahn. So if you do have anything, please comment them now, and we can see if it's something that we can get into here quickly. As we do come towards the final 2 weeks here now until Election Day, what if you take a moment to reflect on your campaign and kind of where we are now, what's been good and what might be able to, what maybe could you build on here as in the last 14 or so days?
Well, I'll continue doing door to door, because I think meeting people and talking person to person I think it's effective, and I think it's meaningful. And I find it meaningful because they raise questions that I have to clarify. And if I haven't thought about it, then I need to think more about it. The strange thing is, most of my campaigning in the past has been a small amount in the spring and summer, and then full bore in the fall. And it looks like this may be the whole election. So it is challenging to know how to communicate with the people who are new to the area, that have no knowledge of my experience on council for 8 years, and to try to get that message out. I am a typical person in her 60s who is not super with media, with tech stuff, and I'm trying. So if they go, I have a website and I have a Facebook page, and you can see things I've posted. But more than anything, I want to hear from people. And my pledge is that after the election, if I am the person who wins, I want to set up these neighborhood meetings to meet with people and talk with them, and then put an agenda together in a larger group, say in a ward, have the council at large come, the ward person come, city manager, and myself, to be able to then hold meetings around the city, and then see how we can work on the 10-year plan.
Certainly. Two more questions for you. One, are there any topics? Are there any issues? Is there anything that you'd like to touch on that we did not?
Well, one, blight. I think blight. So I would say jobs is my number one priority, increasing communication, and having people really know what is going on and how to make that clearer. And then third is blight. When in my last year on council, I utilized the county land bank, and the county land bank, I won't go into the details about it. Let me just say this. It is possible, if you own your home and live next to a vacant lot, that the county land bank can strip the liens and you can acquire that property for $100 plus court costs, which can be about $1,000. So
Okay.
I would say it's about $1,100. But by the time I left, 22 families were in the pipeline for this. And that meant that on the other side and it's months to go through the whole process,
Right.
but many of them were doubling their property, and one family had almost no yard at all, and then now they've doubled their lot, so that's all grassy area for their children to play. And so it accomplished a few things. The county land bank took down more houses that were truly so dilapidated they couldn't be restored, and then people who were already homeowners who had lived through the nightmare of having a house next door just slowly debilitate, become decrepit. And now they've expanded their property line. So I worked very hard with Tabitha Glover at the county land bank, and I'm very, very proud of that. I would love for it to be hundreds, but at least 22 really took advantage of that offer.
And my final question for you today is, if someone's heading to the polls in 2 weeks and a day, what do you want them to know about you and your potential if you were to become mayor?
Well, I want you to know that I will do what I can to offer leadership, to present to council the concerns that I hear from our people, and to present to the people the solutions that the council members are coming up with, to improve our parks, to make more job opportunities, to continue to celebrate our city's history, to appreciate the volunteer efforts, and to try to enlist more young families who I know are busy, but it's a great thing to model for your children that something in the city, you will extend yourself and volunteer. So I would appreciate your support, and I welcome it. Thank you.
Steubenville mayoral candidate Kimberly Hahn. Kimberly, thanks for taking some time with us.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. It was
You're
nice
welcome.
to sit down and have a little bit of an open conversation about things. Folks, you can join us for more Beyond the Podium coverage here on the WTOV9 digital channels, and of course WTOV9 as we approach primary day on May 6th here in Ohio. Thanks for joining us this evening.